have to defend. So I'll just tell you a quick story about where I was and what I was doing and why this date is important to me. On September 11, 2001, I was a junior at NC State University. I had just woken up to go to my 9 o'clock or 9:15 class. Or Gerardo, thank you. I was sitting in my car because I lived off campus. I convinced my parents to get a single apartment for me because I hated dealing with other people and their dirty habits. And so I was sitting in my car waiting for something called the Wolf Line. It's a bus system at NC State that takes you all around campus because it's such a massive campus that they need buses to get you from Centennial to the Brickyard, to the bell tower, to the vet school, and everywhere else. And so I was waiting for that bus, and I was listening to the radio in my car, and I heard G105 come on the radio after a song and say, "Oh my gosh, we have breaking news. A plane has crashed in the World Trade Center." They didn't know it was a terrorist attack. They thought it was a mechanical malfunction. Planes crash, unfortunately, sometimes. And they thought that the plane maybe had a mechanical and ended up trying to, just like Captain Sullenberger from here in North Carolina landed his plane in the Hudson one time when the plane malfunctioned and hit like a squadron of geese. They thought it was some sort of mechanical thing. That first plane, no one knew what was happening. Well, I hopped on the bus and I rode in. It was a British Lit class. I handed in a paper to my professor and I cut class and went back to my apartment. The paper was the real grade. I didn't care hearing about any more British literature that day. And my routine on a normal morning where I had that 9:15 British Lit class, I'd go to class, I'd come back, I'd eat a bowl of cereal, and I'd cut on SportsCenter. Find out about what games, NFL, whether it was Monday Night Football or whatever it might have been. And I turn on ESPN, and ESPN's not on. It says ABC News. And I'm like, wait, did they change the channels on me? And so I change it to ESPN2. And it says ABC News. And then I go to the channel, I know it's ABC News, and it's the same thing, and I start changing channels. And every one of them is on their news affiliate, whether it was CBS or Fox or ABC or NBC. And I finally stopped to be like, why is this on every channel? A plane crash. Unfortunately, it happens from time to time. And then I noticed that there are 2 buildings on fire. And I'm still a little confused until they show the replay of the second plane striking the building and a giant fireball flying out the backside. And I hear them talk about how this was a planned attack and that America was under attack. And I just sit there in stunned silence, watching. And then they pan in and you see people hanging out windows. You see people on the roof waving at the news choppers and the police helicopters, hoping that they'll land on the roof and save them from the burning inferno below. Then people get desperate. There's so much smoke, they're knocking windows out. They're hanging out the windows. Some people are climbing out and holding on for dear life, hoping that somebody will get there to put the fire out and save their life. At this point, another plane crashes into the Pentagon. Then a third or fourth plane crashes into Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Huh? 4 planes in total. 2 hit the World Trade Center, 1 hit the Pentagon, which represents all branches of our military in Washington, D.C., and there was a 4th plane that crashed outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it's called Flight 93, and it crashed because the people on board found out what they were going to do with the plane, and they charged the cockpit and forced the pilots to crash into a field outside of Pittsburgh. But we didn't know that at that moment. That plane was destined, it was supposed to go and crash into the White House. But because of the heroic actions of those people, it crashed into a field, and the only people that died were the people on that plane. But all of a sudden, I'm sitting there saying, why are they attacking Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania? New York, okay, they had tried to blow up the World Trade Center before by putting a bomb in the basement and detonating it. Back in the 90s, I think 93 to be specific. That didn't work. So I knew the World Trade Center was a terrorist location to try to attack. The Pentagon, that's our 5 branches of the military. But Pittsburgh, then they showed a map of all the airplanes that were currently in the air across America at that time, and how they were grounding flights and forcing every plane to go to the closest airport. And they show Raleigh-Durham International Airport, that's right there in Raleigh, and there's probably 50 planes circling above. And I go outside and see planes just circling, wondering which one might fall out of the sky and maybe hit somewhere in Raleigh. Thankfully, a friend of mine had called by this point. She was alone at her sorority house. I was alone in my apartment, and she just wanted to have someone. She was like, are you seeing this? It's like, yeah. And we literally sat there not saying a word, but that gave us some sort of connection so we weren't alone in this situation. It was scary. That I didn't know were we being attacked? Was this a full-fledged attack? Are more planes going to fall out of the sky from all over the place? And then it starts showing those individuals as they're hanging outside the building, realizing that help's not coming. And if you can see this little shadowy figure, people started jumping. Right? And the TV cameras are zoomed in on these people hanging off of a building, clinging on to the little bit of life they have left, and realizing help's not coming, and they're either going to burn alive or they can jump to their death. And it shows them making that horrific choice. And there were people that held hand in hand and jumped together, and the camera would follow them as they disappear behind other buildings. And I started thinking to myself, that somebody somewhere recognizes that person and just watched their uncle or their brother or their aunt or their sister commit suicide on national television. It was terrible. All right, later on, there was a documentary by 2 French brothers who were with the fire department on that day, just filming a random documentary, and they were in the lobby of World Trade Center, and you hear this terrible crashing sound every few seconds. It was of the people jumping to their death and crashing through the awning at the entrance. The firefighters, when they went outside, they had to be careful to dodge falling bodies from 120 stories up. Then I'm sitting there, and I watch the buildings fall live on television. You're like, man, I hope they got to get there. They got to help these people. And all of a sudden, bam, 120 stories down to nothing. Live on television. Watching it as it happens. It is one of those things that will always stay with me. One, I'll always remember my friend and the fact that we were there for each other. And I will always think of her on this day and be thankful that we were both there for each other to help us through something that was scary when you're on your own off at college. I couldn't call my parents. My parents were teachers. They were busy trying to keep their class, from losing their minds. My mom's a kindergarten teacher. My dad was a high school teacher. I'll never forget watching people die live on television.
is that?